Jesus talked a lot about money. Money was one of the number one topics that he discussed. Jesus told his disciples, you cannot serve God and money. And when he told them this, the Pharisees mocked him because they loved money. And so Jesus told them a parable. He told them this story about a rich man and a poor man. The rich man died and the poor man died. The rich man went to hell. The poor man went to Abraham's arms, Abraham's bosom, which speaks of heaven. And the rich man was in torment, and he cried out to Father Abraham, which tells you he was a son of Abraham. He was an Israelite. And he said, send Lazarus to dip his finger in water and cool my tongue. And Abraham said it was impossible because there was a gulf between the two of them. Jesus tells this story to illustrate the contrast between those who live just simply with a self-focus, those who live for the material enjoyment of the material universe, versus those who live for something else. Lazarus represents the person who couldn't indulge. He couldn't satisfy any hope in this material world. And so he presumably would have had to put his hope somewhere else. Why is Jesus telling us this story? What is he trying to communicate to us? Jesus is telling us that, one, everybody has to die. This world is not something that we will live in forever, but everybody has to face the final judgment. The Bible says we have one life to live, and after this, the judgment. So the real issue in life is not how to enjoy your best life now, but how to prepare for the life to come. This life is really a dress rehearsal for that which is to come. We also see that this man presumed that he was saved. He considered himself a son of Abraham. We also see the Pharisees thought that they were sons of Abraham. They said to Jesus, we have Abraham as our father. If you remember, that's the very thing that John the Baptist told them not to do. He said, don't tell yourselves you have Abraham as your father, because God is able to raise up these stones as children of Abraham. Jesus also said, if you really loved Abraham, you would have loved me, because Abraham rejoiced to see my day. But this man calls upon Abraham. He calls him Father, Father Abraham, which to a Jewish person meant that he was a son of the covenant. He assumed that he was saved, and yet he finds himself in torment in these flames. What went wrong? Why is he there instead of with Abraham? Just as this man should not have presumed that he was in covenant relationship with God, neither should we. We should not just presume that we're saved just because we've prayed a simple prayer, just because we call ourselves Christians, we go to church, we do religious things. What we really see, the real issue here, is that this man, even though he had a form of religion, he called Abraham Father Abraham, and yet his real hope is in material things. He's living for material pleasure. He's not thinking about his neighbor, which Jesus said the second commandment is like the first. To love your neighbor is like loving God. So if we say we love God, but we just ignore our neighbor, this was a sin of neglect, a sin of omission. Here Lazarus is laying at his doorstep and he does nothing to help him. Rather, his whole focus is a self-focus. His whole purpose in life is to live for his own selfish enjoyment. The goal of his life was to store up riches for himself, to say to himself, eat, drink, and be merry. If you remember, Jesus told a parable about another rich man in Luke chapter 12, and he said that God said to him, fool, this night your soul will be required of you. Then whose will those things be which you have provided? And so Jesus warns us. He says, don't just think about your material enjoyment in this life. We need to prepare for the life to come. And the way we prepare is by changing our focus from a self-focus to a God focus and to an others focus. If we will give away our lives, Jesus said, if you lose your life for my sake, you will find it.